Hey everybody, it's Kyle. So yesterday I was asked a real good question, and the question was, what do you do when your child on the autism spectrum is mean to their siblings? And in this case, when she would try to impose consequences on her son on the spectrum for being mean, he gets very, very aggressive. And so she wants to know, how does she, if she lets him get away with it, then what message is that sending the other children in her family who are feeling horrible because the brother, in this case I guess it was a boy, is mean to him? And it's a great question, and it's something we in our family have personally experienced. I imagine a lot of people have. And I'll give you a little background. My son is now 17, and he has a little brother. My son on the spectrum, one of my two sons on the spectrum, is 17, and he has a little brother that's 8 years old. And so when his little brother, who's a typical little boy, he's a twin with a sister, his twin is a sister, and when he was younger, 2, 3, 4, and at that age, his brother on the spectrum would be real mean to him. And I would have the same problem. If I approached my son and said, it's not nice to be mean in that way, by the way, if I said, you don't need to treat him like that, and I said it in a way that seemed mean, I would have the same experience. He would get violent and angry and frustrated, and sometimes start hitting and kicking, and it could set him into a meltdown. And so it didn't take me long to realize that that wasn't an effective way to do things for either of my kids. And so what we started doing with my typical little boy, his name is Jack, when his brother would be mean to him, we started explaining to Jack that he needed to leave. If his brother said something to him or did something to him that was unkind, he didn't need to fight back or retaliate or stay in the room. He would just come to one of his parents and say, Eric is being mean to me. And that would give us as parents, first of all, a chance to find out what he did and counteract that in Jack's mind. So on many occasions, Jack would do something. It could be even just laugh out loud, and Eric would go towards him like he was going to hit him. And Jack would just leave and come down and say, I laughed and Eric was going to hit me. And so it would give us a chance to explain to Jack what was going on with Eric. And sometimes when he was so little, we're not sure he understood. But sometimes it would give us an opportunity to say, you're a good boy and we love you, and give him a big hug. And so it got to a point where anytime there was a dispute between him and his brother, he could pretty much expect to get some love from his parents and his older brothers, who are typical. We've got two older sons that are typical. And so we kind of made that a pattern. If Eric would get mad at him, he would immediately leave and come and report to my wife and I, or one of his two older brothers, who would immediately go through the process and say, what happened? I'm sorry. We love you. You're a good boy. You didn't do it on purpose, right? And so we would go through that process, and Jack got to where he didn't mind so much the result of coming and reporting. Now, what ended up happening on the other side of that was that in some cases, in a lot of cases, they were playing with each other when conflict arose. And when Eric would be mean to him and Jack would leave, Eric would ultimately lose his playmate. And so I would go up and tell Eric, or whoever was involved, the process was to go and tell Eric, you hurt Jack's feelings. And say it in a kind way and say, maybe you didn't mean to, but you hurt Jack's feelings, and he's sad. And he can't play with you when you're hurting his feelings. And initially, he wasn't too happy to hear that, But because we said it in a way that was calm, cool, and collected, he didn't escalate so much. And over a period of time, what's happened now is when Jack comes down and has a dispute, he'll come to my wife or I, and we'll talk to him and give him a hug and tell him he's a good boy and make sure he didn't do something on purpose. And then we'll go up to Eric and say, Jack can't play with you because his feelings are hurt. And he started to understand that the consequence for him was that he lost his playmate. Now, sometimes he doesn't care. Sometimes he doesn't want Jack in his room or want Jack around. And so usually Jack doesn't want to be around when Eric doesn't want him around. And so Eric has his own space he can go to, and they can separate themselves. So I guess the point to this story is pretty simple. For us, and maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but we realized very quickly that going in and trying to impose consequences immediately caused escalations and frustrations on all sides. But handling it in a kind way and not necessarily imposing some outside consequences other than the natural consequence, which is when you're mean to people, they don't want to be around you. And in some cases that's okay. Sometimes they don't want people to be around him. In the case of my son, sometimes he wants to be alone. And when he does, it's usually best to leave him alone. So Jack needs to understand that. But in a lot of cases, the consequence for Eric was that he lost the ability to have fun with his brother. And he's learned that. And so those situations don't arise as often anymore. When they do arise, there's a very specific process in place that we handle it through, and there generally aren't any escalations. My son Jack is a very sensitive kid, and so sometimes he does get his feelings hurt, and when he does, it's okay to come to us and maybe cry to us a little bit and let us hug him and love him and tell him how fantastic he is for following directions and removing himself from the situation. And it's helped him to understand that Eric has some unique needs, and that a lot of people in this world have unique needs, and sometimes we have to work around the needs of others. And so hopefully that's answered your question. It's a great question. I love it. Please, other people, if you have questions about how to manage certain situations, let me know. There's a really good chance I've experienced it, and there's a really good chance if I've experienced it, I've created some sort of a process, because I believe I'm not going to live like that. And so I believe you know what your outcome, you know what you want your outcome to be, you take action, and then you adjust until you come to a good resolution. So hopefully that's helpful. Ask away. Let me know what you need. I want to help. Have a great day. Bye-bye.